Hey guys, I just want to let you know that I am now a certified spiritual life coach. If you resonate with the topics and lessons that my guests and I discuss on my podcast, and you feel that you could use some empowerment and direction in your journey of becoming who you truly are, consider booking a free discovery call with me on my website at kindlemccullough.com. And now on to the episode. Hey guys, I'm excited today. I have with me Andres Schabelman. Is that right? How you say it? Okay, just
Yeah,
wanted to double
yeah.
check. And he contacted me. He's had a really interesting journey in his life, and he also just wrote a book. So I thought I'd have on today to talk about all of that. Andres, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your upbringing, and kind of, I guess, how you started out with what you did for work at first.
Yeah. So I grew up in New Orleans. My parents are from Argentina. There was a huge emphasis on, accomplishing
Mm-hmm.
all the things. That led me to eventually get a master's degree in public policy at Harvard. I at some point joined Google, and then got lucky and was one of the first 30 Airbnb employees, and then made it to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with another tech company called Fiverr when they went public in 2019. And so I just felt like I had reached the pinnacle of that world, and wasn't necessarily any closer to being filled with meaning or joy or
Mm-hmm.
happiness and
Mm-hmm.
purpose and all those things. And so, um, I think the awakening process was happening before, but reaching the pinnacle of the thing that I had thought was going to be the thing that got me everything I ever wanted, and realizing it wasn't, was a great sort of like
Mm.
clear gift from the world, being like, oh yeah, there's something else to look inside here, because you've given away a lot of your hopes and dreams and pinned them to other people's hopes and dreams, and so, how do we get back to the self? How do we get back to the core? How do we get back to the thing that makes us fill with fire?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Your story sounds so familiar in the sense of, I've read lots of stories about, immigrants and then their kids and how they come to America for potentially better opportunity, and they really emphasize, working hard and um achieving a lot, making a lot of money, being in these high positions. And it's not like these are necessarily bad things, but there's there's more to life than that, and there's something deeper. And so um it's always interesting with the children. Their dreams are not necessarily the same as their parents. They don't have the same experience coming from a different country where maybe their opportunities weren't there, and so they're trying to make sense of their own life, and love their parents, and live up to the dreams, but also figure out, what does it mean for me to live in this country, and my experience being raised here, and what do I want out of my life. And so yeah, it's just really interesting that you went through the same kind of
Yeah,
process.
yeah, and I mean, even it's not even just my parents who are coming from Argentina in this case and instilling these, what, yeah, you're right, immigrant values, that but for me, and also just my family, originally they're they're Jews that came from Ukraine, that, or that area that had been like persecuted
Mm.
over a whole
Mm-hmm.
long
Mm-hmm.
period of time. And so I really think that that gets instilled almost in your DNA, this sort of like survival mode
Mm.
mentality, that like if you don't know how to pick yourself up should some sort of catastrophe happen, either through great education or a lot of money or a lot of, or some other skills that you need to acquire, then you will
Mm.
die. Is like,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, that's instilled in you, often using love as the
Mm-hmm.
mechanism for that to be passed on. It's like, hey, you'll get love, you'll get our
Hmm.
love, child, but you must do these things first.
Right, right. Yeah, I've also heard, it's a stereotype, and I don't know how accurate it is, but like the Jews being very wealthy and very like achieving based. But that's interesting what you said about like persecution and how that kind of instills that within you, and I could see that. Um, and yeah, so it's interesting how it's places love, and it is love because they care about you, they want you to be safe, but there's so much fear behind that. And I think it's hard growing up, being young, you're developing, you're learning, and to so much fear mixing in with that love, it's confusing. It just kind of distorts things, and so you really, yeah, it puts you in that fear mentality, and um it makes it's kind of disconnecting from yourself, and you're wary of the world and what could happen. And I think that sometimes you can start to realize that, and then you can even have some friction or pull away from parents, or where you feel that coming from, because you don't want that, but then it's still within you and you still have to deal with that. So it's an interesting journey.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And operating from a place of fear is not the formula. I remember driving through Texas in the pandemic and seeing signs all over Texas that said "faith over
Right.
fear," uh, which I laughed at and I liked. But I think there's some truth to that way of living, which is like it's not you can't live a life that's really worth living if you're living it from a place of fear and pessimism, and that potentially the worst could
Mm,
happen, as opposed to no, what's possible, what can I do, um, like to be open to the magical, to be open to the synchronistic, to be open to that your dreams are possible. All those things like are make life, in my opinion, so much more exciting and
hmm.
alive.
Yeah.
Um, so waiting for the catastrophe to happen is like is more of like yeah, it can really
Hold you back.
yeah, hold us back, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, did you what were your ambitions growing up? Were you like, I want to be, on a high profile company, or be one of the, like you ended up, and what did you believe that would do for you? Did you think that, oh, I'm going to feel safe, or did you
Hmm.
feel like I'm going to feel fulfilled, or both, or what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer will be some combination of how I felt like it was then and my understanding of myself as a child now. But basically, well, I come from a long line of doctors. My dad's a cardiologist, retired. My grandfather, my uncle, now my brother he's an emergency medicine doctor. But they're all doctors, and I think the expectation was that I would be a doctor. And I knew early on that I wasn't going to be able to do it, and so I had a lot of like self kind of hate
Mm-hmm.
around that that fact. And maybe I had believed that somehow I could be a doctor for a little bit, but it became pretty clear that that wasn't going to happen. And then I think my mind would jump to ways, well, what could I do in order to still get the love and validation from my parents, but do it in a way that wasn't going to lead me to do something that I couldn't do. So then I started to have kind of like more delusions of grandeur around like kind of I think I once dreamt of being like the president of the US or something, and I had these like big dreams that weren't really that grounded in anything, except I think it was like this is so big that now that I won't be going into medicine, it will
Make it
still lead
okay.
to me being loved and
Uh-huh.
accepted by my
Right.
parents.
Yeah, yeah. And so once you,
How about
oh yeah,
you?
for me,
I'm
yeah.
curious.
Thanks. My dad was an electrical engineer, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. But I did think that I needed to do something grand, and like I was pretty smart. I read a lot of books, and I was in like dual credit classes and stuff like that. So I thought I had to, I have to live up to this potential. And, but at the same time, I was kind of lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But I did go to grad school, and I thought maybe I'll being like an English professor since I love to read. And then I got into writing, and that was kind of like help my healing and processing of my brain. Um, but it eventually I went to grad school twice. I dropped out twice. It took me a while to kind of figure out my path until now of becoming a life coach. And, now I'm trying to work on that and make that work. But I finally feel like I've kind of found what I actually am passionate about and where I fit and what I wanted to do. So yeah, it's been a long journey for me. Yeah, I'm 32. The journey itself, figuring out what I'm passionate about, what my purpose is, and what my path is. And yeah, there was a lot of me feeling expectation of fitting in or doing this certain thing. And it wasn't so much like you have to be a doctor, kind of like your parents, like you have to be this certain role, but kind of just this high achieving feeling in general. It was more vague, I guess, this feeling. And it's just a
Mm,
lot of, and I did have a lot of shame as well in myself, and imposter syndrome in grad school, and anxiety. And I kind of uh, was really struggling for a long time. And I had to go to a therapist, and he started teaching me meditation, and that was really helpful. Then grad school, it was even worse. And it was kind of my awakening that kind of like I felt like broke me, but then brought me to like my next step, and helped me connect myself in a deeper way, and eventually led me on a spiritual journey where I found my path. So just like
mm,
you kind of, there's a point where you're like, oh, I'm living my life for outside expectations, but then you internalize that. So it's you yourself, but it's all these voices, and then you're like, what do I actually want? What does my soul actually desire?
mm,
So I think most people, there's some people who maybe they don't have those voices, or they've always been connected with the self. But I think most people, it's a journey of discovering what does my soul actually desire, and what is my path. And some people will never get there. And so I think that people like us can be voices to try to help wake other people up, and help them connect with their deepest desires and their purpose.
mm. Yeah, I agree with that. And I hope that, like, yeah, I think that for me, I think the thing that translates the most, hopefully, to listeners is the sort of like authentic, the way that you authentically share that. It's coming
Hmm.
from such a deep, real, authentic place, and I find that that's the place that kind of has the ability to kind of like penetrate others when I'm in like when I'm in conversation. I'm like, oh, the only times that anything ever kind of like shifts in another person when I'm talking to them is like when I'm like really truly coming from my heart.
Mm.
Um, so I try as best as possible to stay in that expression, as best as I can, because also then it also can serve as my own best guide too. So I think that was one of the first practices I had in terms of making sure that I was like tracking whether I was like living for myself or living for someone else, sort of developing the muscle around like what is my heart saying as opposed to what is my mind
Hmm.
saying.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that I've had lots of conversations with people, and um, sometimes they have a perspective and you have a perspective, and it's different, and you're trying to talk logically about how your perspective you feel is right and what they think is right, and you're just going in circles,
Mm-hmm.
and you get to a place where you're like, I'm sick of this, like um how can we actually connect and find oneness and find understanding, and get somewhere, not just this mind circles circus we're going on. And yeah, it's that authenticity, and that I think it's that people are listening more to the energy behind, whether they realize it or not, the energy behind what you're saying. And yeah, and so if you
Yeah.
if you can connect with that authenticity in your heart, and portray that, then that's going to do a lot more connecting rather than trying to explain yourself logically so that they'll understand exactly how you understand the world.
Totally, totally.
Yeah. So, okay, you were, one of the top entrepreneurs. What did that feel like once you kind of achieved the American dream? Did you feel like, oh, I made it, and then you were like, is this feels empty, or what was that like?
Mm, well, like there were parts along the journey that were filled with so much uh, joy. The being one of the first the earliest Airbnb employees was like a
Mm.
wild
Hmm.
ride. When I had arrived there, no one had heard about what Airbnb was. Everyone would talk about it kind of like, oh yeah, maybe it's like couch surfing, but with money and I don't know, it was like a hard thing to explain. And then slowly over time, you maybe once in a while you'd hear it in a conversation in San Francisco, like at a coffee shop, and then all of a sudden it started to appear everywhere. And anyway, the group of people that worked there from the early days were we were all committed to this beautiful mission of bringing people
Mm.
together um, to connect. It was less apparent to me at the time that it was really a business. And eventually it became very clear that it was a
Mm.
big
So you had
business.
like a
And
mission, like a
yeah,
dream of like a really authentic, loving connection kind of thing.
yeah, and it was so beautiful. Like we really the earlier employees, we were all just kind of they were what I would call my
Mm.
people. It was just sort
Hmm.
of like we were all about human connection, and we wanted to encourage others to feel the beauty of that and of different people's homes and of the hosts themselves to like the beauty of opening up their own world and sharing their own culture or their own spaces and that's what united us all and it was just like a wild, fun time in
Hmm.
tech. And I think as the company started to mature, it started to become apparent that all of the things that I had really like fought for and bled for and like lost thousands of hours of sleep for and didn't mind doing because
Mm.
that was just it was an expression of who I was. It seemed that more and more the values that those of us that started the company or were there at the beginning at least um, those values started to kind of get muddled by the values of um, kind of trying to go
Hmm.
public and and sort of playing the game of the corporate game and I think I really experienced some heartbreak at some point um, yeah it was sort of like a yeah, just a moment where 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 you realize that the things that you stand for and have stood for now no longer like matter to the place that you'd been focusing all your energy
Hmm.
towards. And once again, I think it was like a big it felt like a big slap in the
Hmm.
face. And of course I mean I'm older and wiser now and I'm like, oh no, that's just how
The
like it
system, yeah.
is. That's how it
Hmm.
works, but it was a harsh
Hmm.
reality, and it happened a couple more times in my tech career. Sort of that realization, um, and it's kind of like how your heart gets hardened after
Hmm.
a lot of
Hmm.
heartbreak in relationship with people, where you stop being so open about what your feelings are and you stop like diving in full with your fullness because you're like being protective now of those feelings of
Hmm.
pain that happen if you were to dive fully into someone else or something, and then you realize that there's a huge part of your heart that's like missing in its expression because all you're doing is trying to protect it from feeling the
Hmm.
pain that you once felt. Well, that's kind of like what I sensed not only in my personal life that was happening, but that was also happening in the entrepreneurial life,
Hmm.
and I just kind of wanted to I wanted to regain that ability to feel from that place because I loved life when I threw myself into
Hmm.
things.
Yeah, I think that creative expression is so powerful, and that's part of what we came here to do. And you were being able to express that. But um, so I'm curious, do you feel like it was the other people that weren't aligned with your vision, your values, or was it more just like the system and the bureaucracy and, you know, crony capitalism, or what was it? Or did they have the same values as you, but it shifted over time? I'm sure it's complex.
Yeah, I think it is complex. I think that as a company matures and grows and it ends up having more and more employees, you do need I think in the at least in the current models that are out there, you need managers to manage
Right.
people. And managing people is inherently
Right.
complicated
Because we're
be,
complicated.
because we're complicated and hierarchical systems sort of require that lower levels of um, within an organization that they stay as passive as possible in order to move the ship
Mm,
forward essentially.
hmm.
And it's a bit, I mean, it's a bit I don't know what the word is, but
Simplistic.
anyway, it's simplistic and it's a little bit
Hmm.
harsh, I think. But essentially, like as the company moves towards going public, it also creates a pressure to put certain management pillars in
Hmm.
place. And those management pillars over time start to be flooded by people that were really good at checking all the boxes, like actually I had
Hmm.
been, and like going to the MBA school and going to the McKinsey and Company consulting group, and all that stuff. And then you start to have people that are much more wired to not be in the company for the place of their heart, but to be in the company from the place of
Mm,
structure
hmm.
and reporting
Hmm.
hierarchies, and you start to build out a whole system. And at the very bottom of that value system, like really starts to what starts to dissipate out is the people who are there invested in
Hmm.
that company from the place of their heart. And to be fair, maybe we shouldn't have ever had our heart invested in a company or something. Um, but I would like to believe that there is a structure that we
Hmm.
could come up with that would allow us to be our full selves rather than having to have like, a hierarchical system that really, really kind of numbs people's emotions and seeks to numb them out. Because I think that causes a lot of problems in our
Yeah,
society.
yeah, that's super interesting and makes a lot of sense to me. Have you heard of Simon Sinek?
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
I don't know a lot, but he's interested in systems and businesses and how we can be more authentic and what's the best way forward. And there's another thing. Have you heard of something called spiral dynamics?
What is
It's
spiral
a
dynamics?
sociological slash psychological stages of development. The
Uh-huh.
Beck, Francis, I think Francis Beck. I know his last name is Beck.
Uh-huh.
Developed, and other people have taken it on. And
Okay.
it's just a way of understanding how society has changed over time, and um, yeah, the systems at work, and kind of also looking to the future and where we're going. So it's just another way of looking at where we've been, where we are, and where we might go, and what that would look like, and
Mm.
how we can get there. So I just think it's super interesting. I don't want to
Yeah.
get too off in the weeds in the sidetrack, but just
Yeah.
about capitalism and businesses, and um, just interesting to think about, like, how can we move forward, and how can we make this more authentic, more heart centered, and how can we work with the system that we have, and how can we, kind of change the system to make it better. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess to bring it home to a
Mm-hmm.
certain extent, like there's um this system that we've built, the capitalist one, which has done
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
wonders for our country and for a lot of people's freedom, and relative to other systems, it's probably still the
Right.
best.
Right.
That being said, one of the trade-offs that we've had to make is specifically around our
Mm.
feelings, because I think that this system really promotes and encourages us to want to attain
Mm-hmm.
more. And attaining more, no problem with attaining more. I think people should want to
Mm-hmm.
attain more. But that's the thing, is that people forego feeling into what it is they actually want and desire in the
Mm-hmm.
world, and just channel all of their energy to attaining
Mm.
more and more
Mm-hmm.
and more. And along the way, we forget the process of tapping in and feeling into what we actually want and feel in our human
Mm-hmm.
experience. And I think that's the biggest drawback of what we've built
Yeah,
there.
yeah, well said. I think another way of saying it too is that there, what I believe is that there's deeper values, there's deeper things that actually bring contentment and lasting joy and um, healthy for the world than just attaining more. It's so attaining more, like you said, is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like, what is the deeper value of why you're doing it? And if you don't have that, and it's just about attaining more and more, then it becomes corrupted, you could say, and more selfish and more fear based, and then you're just trying to take the biggest part of the pie from others, and you're not working together, and then it becomes very unhealthy, and yeah, you lose that deeper
Mm,
contentment and values, and um, yeah, yeah,
totally.
awesome. So, I guess you kind of had. Was there like a moment, or was it like a gradual process of you kind of realizing these things, and how did that make you move on to what you do now?
Um, well, I definitely had different experiences. Some in the plant medicine space. There's been a bunch of therapy that I've done. There's been, experiences in relationship with different partners that has led me to realize that I am not exactly, that I haven't been exactly where I've wanted to be. Um, there were traumatic events on the road that happened because I travel a lot. There were things that happened that I couldn't predict. There were just sort of moments in my life that I was forced to look at, um, to look at myself,
Mm-hmm.
and to do so critically, but also with grace. So I think in the past I could avoid looking at myself by not being filled with grace towards myself. And I think what I learned either through therapy or through the love of others that were loving me in difficult moments was sort of like the power that that would have. Um, yeah, and that had a lot of power, like to allow myself to really look at myself in in both my positive and negative qualities, if that's how you want to frame it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that hard times, have this way of making us where we have to stop or slow down or really do some inner reflection, and actually, so for so long we can kind of be in the go through the motions, or distract ourselves from really looking inside and what's going on, and what we need to look at. And so hard times kind of stop that, and where we have to really dig deep, and we can resist for so long, but eventually I think we're forced to kind of confront ourselves, and but I think there is we have to accept the call, to really look inside.
Yeah.
You can ruin your life and keep doing more and more extreme stuff to try to numb, to try to not look at yourself and what the issues are and stuff like that. But yeah, to accept the call and then go inward, and then it's painful, but it's also very healing if you continue to do the work. And so, congrats on accepting the call.
Thank you. Yeah. I think I am motivated by having like a really deep and alive and meaningful life. And live, I mean like just feeling all the hues of emotions that are available to us. Um, in the dark and in the
Mm.
light, and um, all of that aliveness and all of that fullness. I know because every once in a while I make contact with more
Mm-hmm.
layers of
Mm-hmm.
fullness. it like allows me to experience the world around me with just much more um
Richness.
I don't know, like yeah, richness, yeah,
Yeah.
real richness.
Yeah, yeah, the true richness, the inner richness. Yeah, I love that. Um, yeah, I think that some people, they're like, oh, and a lot of times you'll find this with like therapy, like people just want to feel good, but it's like if you want to feel better, if you want to feel more good, you're also gonna have to feel more. You're gonna have to feel more, and that comes with feeling the good and the bad. And obviously that's
Yeah,
scary and that's hard. But I think once I think there's layers to acceptance and to surrender and to going on this journey. But the more you do that, the more you find that this fulfilling, and the more richness you feel, the good that helps you deal with the bad that you feel, and you learn skills and you learn to heal the bad, and so it's less and less scary and more fulfilling over time.
yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. So how did you transition to moving on from those companies and deciding to do what you do now? And what is that? What do you do now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great question. What do I do now? No. So I did really. I think the my, the end of my time within the corporate kind of capitalisty world ended with me being on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and it coincided with me starting to write this book, Captains Wanted, and I think that book kind of was marinating in my head for a while. In one of my periods of my life, I lost a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends from college. He had a
Mm,
terminal brain cancer, and the last words he said on this plane there, Earth, he said, "I am the captain of this ship." And so I think those words had been marinating as I was going through my time at Airbnb and the different companies that I was a part of, which was sort of like, am I really being the captain of my own ship?
mm,
And the book started to be a reflection of what it was that got me closer to that point in my own life. I mean, it's a novel. It's not like a factual
mhm,
representation of my
mhm,
life. And there's reasons for that, which I can get into. But basically, I started writing that book, and I realized even within the book, because that book took me, close to 5 years to write. Even as I was writing the book, I wasn't there, or I don't know. But the book, the yeah, okay. The book was sort of like an expression of that um, that desire of my own to come back to my own source of power, but I wasn't there. Like I
mm,
still am
mhm,
not 100%
mhm,
there. So I was still, well, while I was writing the book, I was still on my own path to figure that out. And I started my own, like as I was writing that book since 2019, and then we had the pandemic and all
mhm,
that stuff. Um, I started taking acting classes. I started taking clown classes. I took what was I doing? I was starting I took some improv classes. I was sort of delving into what
mm,
expression could
mhm,
look like in that period, and kind of playing in different worlds, and then eventually putting an expression out online, which included comedy, it included a travel show, it included some acting, and so I started to just put an expression out into the world, and that currently exists in my Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. It's called Schabelmania.
mhm,
I might change it to Schabel Media, but
mhm,
Schabelmania is what it's at now. And yeah, I've added on a podcast myself that's called Rebel, like RE-BELLE, like really beautiful humans, but also highlighting stories of people that are kind of thinking a little bit outside the
Mm,
box,
love it.
which is everyone
Yeah.
probably.
If you're in your expression,
Exactly, exactly, and yeah. And I think all of that, including the book, is with this idea of without me telling people how to do it, because that would defeat the purpose of what I want to do. Um, to encourage folks to go on their own journey to figure out what is their own source of power, their own source of joy and fulfillment, and ultimately sovereignty, and to then I think move us closer as a people, like to remind us of our shared
mm,
humanity, because I think ultimately all of the work that I've ever done about like repairing some aspects within myself ultimately lead me closer to want to be around other people
yeah.
and in connection with them.
Hmm. Yeah. I love what you said. Very far. Oh yes, yeah, yeah. I love what you said at the beginning there about as you wrote, you're not quite there, but you were in the process, and you're still in the process. And I mean, my podcast is called "Becoming Who We Are," so it's an acknowledgement that we're in the process, and that's what life is. But that's what I love about creative expression, writing, stuff like this. It's like an ideal, or ideals of what can we be, what can we do, what can we dream, and not that we're there yet, but we're in the process, and how can we make sense of it, and what can it's a future oriented thing, and it's a hopeful thing, and it's a belief that we can get there, or we can get closer to that. And I think it's really important in life. And so much of kind of go back to that capitalist mindset of just getting more. We lose the stories and what is actually meaningful to go after future goals and stuff like that. So I think that's so meaningful and beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So you mentioned that in your travels you had some traumatic and some crazy experiences. What were those? What are some of those maybe?
Yeah, I mean, exactly 3 years ago yesterday, I was being drugged and robbed in Colombia. I was in Bogota, and I was on a dating app, Bumble, and I met someone on there, and that person ended up giving me this drug called on the street. It's called burundanga, and in medical terminology, it's scopolamine, and it's a drug that makes you very suggestive. So they would ask me for my crypto passwords and all of my crypto stuff, and I would willingly and hopefully, I would like to imagine in a very charming way, like to tell them what all of my passwords were, and they stole a whole lot of money from me. Um, and I was knocked out for over 20 something hours. And usually in Colombia, they don't normally kill you, at least not by choice or by intent, but they can often overdose you by accident. And that amount of time that I was out is indicative of a mega dose of
Wow.
scopolamine. And I did come close to dying, and um, I know I think that moment was a real big turning point for me, because it was a reminder that I was still needing to work on certain things. And one of those things was I think my over identification with money at the
Mm,
time. The second one was some self-worth stuff around the validation that I needed around women, because there were moments where I had my red flags were up, but I didn't say that I just wanted to like end the
mm,
date, because I was afraid of like hurting
mm-hmm,
the other
mm-hmm.
person. And then third, I think I was really numbing my feelings from having visited my friend who's been taking care of his mom who's got Alzheimer's. It was just an overwhelmingly sad
Mm-hmm.
experience visiting them. And I think rather than working through those emotions, I really just numbed them. And I looked to ways to numb that were very familiar, but in the end made me very susceptible to
Mm.
danger. And so I've really, like, since then, taking it upon myself to really look at those three things. And I think it's also a reminder because that was 3 years ago, right? I'm in the middle of writing my book, um, which is to say, growth isn't
Mm.
linear. Like the lesson around self worth and validation were lessons and stuff that I had been working on for a long time. I had had breakthroughs. I had had breakthroughs on feeling emotions and not numbing out, previously too. And here I was again at this at this breaking point. So I just say that because I think a lot of times we tell stories in these linear
Mm-hmm.
ways that make it seem like that. Oh, I've gotten to where I am, and I got here because every step of the way I was getting
I
progressively better
solved
at
this.
at
I solved this. I
yeah, at
solved this.
solving
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And maybe it's more like to go back to that idea of the
Yeah, I
spiral
was
that
gonna
you
mention
mentioned.
that again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a spiral where I feel like I'm on a different point in the
Mm-hmm.
spiral, but we come back to self worth
Right.
and numbing and
But it's a deeper level, so
all
it's
the
like
time.
not that we haven't moved because I think, yeah, you can get caught in the two traps. The one trap of I've solved this, I moved on, um, or the trap of oh no, I haven't solved this, I'm never going to solve this, or I'm not moving, or I'm just going backwards. But it's like no, you have kept moving. It's just there's more levels to it, and that's okay. That's human.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's really crazy. But also kudos to you for having the maturity to see that not just something bad happened to me and I'm a victim, but it's like there's lessons in here for me to learn about myself that I can take from this and not just go into this victim or fear mentality.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think a lot. I was talking about this last night, and I think it could have
Yeah.
broken many people, and I feel very lucky that whatever I'm wired with is to view these moments as opportunities, because I haven't, since that day, which was January 22nd and 23rd of 2022. Um, I have put out so much more of my heart onto, like, my expressions. It was only 3 or 4 months after that I was in Bosnia filming a travel show. I really learned, I not learned, but I really took to heart the experience and changed aspects of my life to really lead me to put myself out there.
Mm. So yeah, that's interesting. You've talked about like fear and how that pushes you to inauthenticity. How you think that you've learned to use fear in a way to be more authentic, I guess.
I think fear ends up being a great motivator in a way where if I notice that I have some resistance or some fear or something that comes up, um, I'm aware that there's something there to look at
Mm-hmm.
that I want to delve deeper on, and so yeah, I kind of bring myself into those moments to yeah,
Mm-hmm.
well, what I don't know if it's Marcus Aurelius, but the quote is like, "What's in the way is the
Yeah, yeah,
way."
I've heard of that. It's good.
I believe
Yeah.
that. So I think rather than viewing fear in this way where I don't want to see it, I want to just like remove it. That's not how I approach. I just get curious about it, and I'm like, oh, there's fear there. that means that there's something that's tender
Mm-hmm.
for me and that's worth um, looking at in a very like loving and caring
Mm-hmm.
way. And that's kind of how I usually will start that process.
Yeah, I think that's great. So rather than like maybe early in your life, like you see fear, you run away or drown it or whatever, numb it so you don't have to face it. You're running towards it, but also not in a harsh way, like, oh, this is something terrible inside me that I need to like fight or destroy, but a loving relationship. Like, this is a part of me. Like, what does this mean? How can I
Mm,
lovingly deal with this and um, have grace for myself?
exactly. Yeah, I think the energy with which you approach your own fear and the parts that you quote unquote want to get rid of or something is really important because if I just do it, for example, from the place of I'm going to remove this aspect of myself because I see a lot of people in my life who are I don't know if it's type A, but a certain type of personality who can like really like almost just like muscle
Mm-hmm.
their
Mm-hmm.
way to making things happen. But if I do that, I find that I might be able to remove some aspect of my personality or my expression temporarily, but that piece will kind of rear its head back out
It's like a
somehow.
festering wound.
It, yeah, and it'll come back out to play in not so fun ways if I don't like gently uncover it and become curious about it and not do it from a place of like we need to remove this thing. It's more a matter of like actually I want to become more in truth with
Mm.
it.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Definitely, if we just muscle our way, and yeah, like you said, there's some people who are actually really good at it, but then it's deceptive because it comes out in other ways, and I've experienced that myself and other people as well. Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about what like your travels and what you do with people and how that works.
um I don't know if I mean, oh, I guess I do have a travel show, and this travel show has evolved to be more the podcast where I go and I interview people who I find interesting and tell their
Mm,
stories um, of uniqueness and unique expression. But um, for so long, travel was my both my
mm,
escape. It was my way of experiencing different perspectives. It was my source of adventure. Travel has been everything in my life. And I will say that while I think of myself as a great traveler, meaning I can really arrive in a place and figure it out, and I can arrive in a place and connect deeply with locals, and I can arrive in a place and really get all of these interesting perspectives and see the beauty in every place that I go. I have also I think I'm slowing it down a little bit in my in my current. I say that while I'm on the road, so I don't know, uh, but I think I am slowing it down, or at least I have this emerging desire to ground in a little bit more these days because I have found that there are aspects of my self care routines that are really essential for example, feeling my feelings um, and for coming back to myself and all the things that I really care about that have to do with actually being grounded in one spot for a longer period of
hmm.
time.
Yeah, I think.
So yeah, it's shifting.
Yeah, I think you have a great grasp of travel and the pros and the cons. You know, I've traveled some, not a lot. I'm sure not as much as you, but you know, it does offer new perspectives, new culture, new different types of people, and there's lots to learn from that. And just the uncomfortability of something, putting yourself in new situations and learning how to figure that out. And I think it's a growth opportunity. But like you said, it can also be escapism. You can also use it to run from yourself and life, and there is something to putting down roots as well, and grounding down, and um, being with people the same people over time, kind of a home base. And yeah, there's pros and cons both sides. So yeah, I think it's interesting. We all have different like stages in our life, and we're called to different things. And I think that it's great that you're listening to the call wherever it leads you to whatever stage of life that is.
Yeah, yeah, I'm thankful too. Because I mean, we don't want to be running on autopilot. So,
Yeah, 100%. So, tell me about the book. You said that your friend said, "I'm the captain of my soul." It also, or is that right? I'm the captain of my soul. My
my
ship.
ship.
Okay, because it made me think of the quote, "I am the captain of my soul," which is a poem by William Henry Ernest
Ah,
Henley. Yeah. Um,
oh, cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I am the captain of this ship, were his
hmm
words.
What do you think he meant by that?
I don't know what he meant.
That's funny.
um, but I think I've interpreted it for my life to be about, um, yeah, how can I separate myself from all of the ways that other people expect me to live, or all the systems and all the pressures to be something, to mold me into something, but underneath the surface there is, and deep underneath the surface there's a soul there, there's a person there, there's a little boy, there's a there's a heart that is wanting to express itself. And oftentimes the cards are stacked against us in terms of being able to feel into that. And um, Captains Wanted is a blueprint of sorts for getting back to that place and being able to live a life from that place and to be the captain of your own ship.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. It makes me think of, there's this debate, philosophical or religious, about like free will versus like determinism. Like, do we have like total free will, or is everything like determined? And um, how do we make sense of that in life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I fully understand it, but I do get the sense that there are signs along the way to reaffirm that we're on the right path. And sometimes that comes in the form of synchronicity. Sometimes that comes in the form of, I think synchronicity is a
Yeah.
great one, but sometimes, like, those moments when you're walking, or maybe you're in an Uber or you're in a car, and the person you least expect to drop some knowledge on you drops some knowledge
Mm-hmm.
on you,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh, whoa, okay, that's like a break in the
Mm.
matrix.
Makes you pause. You're like, this is wisdom.
Uh-huh. Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And I used to have those moments all the time on the road, in yeah, when on my travels, and I love those. Or like a word, let's say the words, I don't want to say it. The one that came to me was ayahuasca, but like, if for example, if ayahuasca keeps showing up in your world and you hear it on a podcast and you read, you find your eyes go towards it in a book, and then you hear an SNL skit that talks about it, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, it's weird. I've heard this term in my life the last couple of days in very random situations. I just, for me, I start to pay attention to these
Mm-hmm.
signs, and they're there. To me, I feel like they're always
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whether I'm attuned to them or can attune to them is another
Mm-hmm.
question. But that in and of itself is a big part of the book, and a big part of like how I make decisions in my own life. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I love the humility, and I think it's probably true. Is like no one truly totally understands the free will versus determinism. I think there's some like in between kind of state. There's things within our control, and I think that you have to take responsibility and take control. But there's things outside of our control, and if we try to control everything in life, then we're gonna cause ourselves a lot of suffering and cause other people suffering as well. And so it's like, what is outside of our control that we can surrender to, and what can we learn from that? But also, what is in our power to take control of? And how can we listen to synchronicity? And there's lots of different language depending on your culture, your religious,
Yeah,
spiritual beliefs or non-beliefs,
yeah, yeah.
spirit or whatever. I like the word spirit, that
Me
can
too.
help like lead you to expression and meaning and purpose and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it doesn't like I think you can. I use spirit too, but I mean, like if you can use like instead of yeah, wow, this thing has happened a lot, and it's against all odds. This keeps
Mm-hmm.
coming up in my
Mm-hmm.
life. I, I'm not even necessarily sure that it's spirit. I do think it is spirit guiding, but even if you weren't to see it in
Mm-hmm.
that light, I still think life is more fun and enjoyable when I'm following signs that are appearing in my life. It's almost like a choose your own adventure
Mm-hmm.
experience, and I found that why not make life more fun? And I think that's a hard thing for people to do, especially for people who come from cultures where um, there's a lot of it's difficult to receive um, joy,
Mm-hmm.
and there's almost like a comfort in staying in the
Mm-hmm.
darkness
Mm-hmm.
and in the pain. There's a sort of like we know this space; it's familiar.
Yeah, yeah. I thought, I was talking to my friend the other day about growing up very independent and didn't fit in, and I was outside of the group. And um, I always wanted to find community and a place where I felt like I belonged, where I felt similar kindred spirits. And now that I'm an adult, I saw that desire, and I have found that somewhat, but I'm still trying to cultivate that. But then there's a part of me that is like, I don't want that. I want what's familiar. I want to be alone. And so there's like these different parts, and it's like there's always this old part of you that wants what's familiar, what's similar, even if that's more suffering, even if that's, harder. It feels safer because that's what you're used to. And so we have to learn to make sense of that, and how can we have a relationship with that, and keep growing and be like, this is safe too, and it'll be okay if we just take small steps to get there.
Yeah, I like that. The way that you just talk to yourself. That's
Yeah,
nice.
thanks. It's a process. um
Yeah.
and so your book, I read some of it. I just got it, so I haven't read a lot, but so far it's really well written. I've read a lot of books, so I can say that with some authority. But I don't even know. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've ever read a book that was written in second person. And at first, I will be honest, it was a slightly jarring because it's not what I'm used to.
Yeah.
Going back to what you're not used to, but I was surprised at how quickly, um, even through the first chapter, how I got used to it, and it's interesting. So, why did you do that?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, much to the chagrin of the publisher.
Like, no one does this. You can't
Like,
do
what?
this.
um, no, but it's really like, you know, I never wanted to be an influencer or a talking head that became another reason why someone would leave their own source of power. Like these individuals that we see in the in our society that are really accomplished and people kind of look to them as gurus. And I didn't want to be that. Like I wanted to create an experience that like purposely at first is slightly jarring and uncomfortable so that um, whoever's reading it can kind of be like shaken out of their own way of kind of like operating like their autopilot and then hopefully step into this character that is them. It's not me, the author, telling you how to live your life or how to find yourself because I don't know what is best for you. So I'm like I'm trying to navigate this like odd, odd, odd thing in writing where I'm guiding a reader through an experience. I obviously have a story to get
Hmm.
through, and there is some specificity in there, but I'd like it to be a blueprint in some way so that the person can then go on their own journey to find
Mm-hmm.
their own expression and maybe use some of the um I call them cairns, but the like
Yeah, like
like the
yeah, when you're hiking, there's these rock piles, and they're
yeah
like, you're on the right path.
yeah like maybe the book itself can be a
Hmm.
cairn.
I love that.
Um, so that's the reason for the odd second person. And the character really doesn't even really have a gender for a while. I give him a gender at some point, um, but I kind of like wanted it to be anyone.
Yeah, I love that. Really helps put the reader in the shoes of the character.
That was the hope.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what one thing I love about fiction is, um, I think it's less, authoritarian might be a little bit of a strong word, but something like that than nonfiction, in the sense of like, it's not like, here's here's the map of what to do in life, and this is the answer. But it's more like, here's a story, and here's some things that the story may teach. You kind of, it's more open to interpretation. I think it also provides more space for the mystery and the unknown and the complexity and the nuance of life. And I think that to tell a good story, you have to be honest about that, and then you can feel as a reader that authenticity, and that draws you towards that more. In that humility of, I don't know everything. And there is all of that mystery and complexity and nuance to it. And yeah, and so I think there's so much richness, basically, and helps you as a reader imagine, what could be, and what you believe in, and what you can take from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that.
Yeah, and part of the a big part of the books are plant medicine, ayahuasca, and you mentioned that is something that you've experienced, also that you've done in your own life. And so, um, what does that teach, or what have you learned in your own life from that, and how you put that in the book as well?
Um, I think that the that plant medicine and specifically ayahuasca in this case has been a part of my life as a way to feel the connection to the greater unknown, because I think it's easy to just not be in connection with nature or with the power of the unknown and something that is greater than us, but that there's some value in that, and also the connection to unity and to feeling the
Mm.
collective. So
Hmm.
in these experiences, I I feel those realms inside of me in such a visceral way that it's really hard to deny the existence of that powerful spirit or the powerful human connection, or not even just human, because it's just like sort of like the living world's connection to
Yeah,
each other, and like you
universal.
kind of yeah, you're like in the energy
Hmm.
of the whole
Yeah.
thing. And then like as I go on my day to day and I'm not in a ceremony, um, then I can stay connected to that reality,
Hmm.
and it can then help me make decisions in my current life that remind me that there's something greater going on, and that can push me to remember, oh, my job is to find ways to be an instrument within this greater
Hmm.
thing. And if I can remove some of the muck and some of the fears and get to the core of who I am, then I can be in most direct relationship with me
Yeah.
being the instrument within that larger thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. One word I like is alignment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
alignment.
there's something, and I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about like pursuing wealth and you know position and all the stuff, and what the energy is behind that. And so when we connect with this, I'll say oneness, this collectiveness of our shared humanity and shared, I say truth of reality that's deeper than the physical, what we can see, that is ultimately fulfilling and beneficial for all, and not just our small individual physical self and the selfishness and fear-based mentality. Going back to Simon Sinek, he's got a book called Finite and Infinite Games, and it's just like like you said, life can be a game, and are you going to play the finite games of things that are temporarily fulfilling and just about the self, or things that are infinite that's ultimately fulfilling and helps the collective and the whole? And I think that that's kind of what you're speaking to.
That's right.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else you'd like to share about the book or lessons?
No, I mean, I think it's interesting. I don't want to promote the book. What I want is, if anything in this conversation resonated with anyone in the audience, then that, I think, is the impulse and the sign itself to go out and buy and read the book. But if there's no resonance, if none of this has resonance with you, then consider not buying it. It might not be the thing for you. And I think that's kind of like, it's important for me that this book lands in places where it resonates.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. I love that. And that's how I feel about this podcast. There's, I think sometimes some people, and this is me included, go through this period where you've come to a place where you've changed in your life or learned something, and then you want to share it with everybody. And you want everyone to learn or be on this journey with you, but then you continue to grow and you realize people are on their own individual paths, and different things are going to resonate to different people, and also depending on where they are in their own path. And so the best thing we can do is surrender and have respect and appreciate everyone on their journey, and not be controlling, like you have to be here. And it's like, if this resonates with you, great, love to connect. I love this connects with you. But if it's not, go your own way, and that's fine as well.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, is there anything else in general that you wanted to share?
No, I feel like we covered all the important bits here.
Yeah. Well, it's been really great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciate your authenticity and the wisdom and your journey in life. It's really a really fascinating, interesting life you lived, and I am grateful for connecting with you.
I'm grateful for connecting with you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that I put your book link and your socials on the podcast description, so people can find you and your book if they feel aligned.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.